Well, yeah. We end up having.
Start a recording. Okay. Daniel Bearwall,
Present.
Ann Bailey,
Here.
Stephen Booker,
Here.
Kathleen Goforth, Melee Himuli,
Present.
Piso,
Present.
Gail Lee, Jason Mendelsohn, Ralph
Here.
Desiree Fair, here, Robert Whitaker,
Here, Kathleen.
Sorry. Would any member of the public like to make a comment on matters not on our agenda tonight? To make a public comment, raise your hand. Or dial 9 if you're calling from the phone. Do you have any members of the public with us?
I'm not seeing any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay. Right, then our first item of business will be to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda items. Any discussion about that, or do I have a motion?
I move we set the agenda and approve the consent calendar. Second.
Second from Michael.
Thank you. Daniel Bearwall,
Aye.
Diane Bailey,
Approved.
Stephen Booker, Michael Clausen,
Approved.
Kathleen Goforth,
Approved.
Melee Himuli,
Approved.
Aurelio Huiza,
Approved.
Gail Lee, Jason Mendelsohn, Cheryl Shaft,
Approved.
Desiree Fair, Robert Whitehair.
Approved.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you. Next up. Alright. The next item on the agenda is the chair report. I have a very short one. I'm just going to highlight a couple things we talked about last month. In our March meeting, we discussed a PCE staff proposal to implement a hybrid approach to rate setting. We did not take action on the proposal. We also learned about proposed changes for net energy metering customers whose solar systems generate more value in excess energy than they consumed. We made this recommendation. The CAC supports the staff recommendation regarding changes to the NEM annual cash out policy and asks PCE to encourage the excessive solar generators to fully electrify their facilities, add battery storage, and or explore the potential for microgrids. Since the March meeting, Margaret Lee of South San Francisco resigned to focus more on her in-laws who are facing health challenges. Yeah, and that is my report. Is there any public comment on my report? All right. The next item of business is our introductions, and we'll be doing them tonight. We have one really easy question. Please tell us one way that climate change has affected your life, personally or professionally. Michael, can we start with you?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, there's the first thing that jumps in my head, which isn't necessarily the most important, is that I've been an avid backpacker for many years. And it's all of a sudden, you go up in the High Sierra and later in the summer, you have to make sure that you know where water is going to be, because creeks and streams are drying up in the High Sierra. They probably won't this year because there's been a lot of snow. But the climate has definitely changed up there in the High Sierras. The glaciers have shrunk. That's one way.
That's a pretty dramatic example of a change. That's right.
For me, I think I've had more instances now where I've had to worry about family in the Philippines because they get typhoons more often than I recall ever before. So just, yeah, another worry that comes up.
That's dramatic too. Yeah. Robert?
You know, on a personal level, I've learned the word totality in the sense that it's a total commitment to fix the predicament we're in. And that goes for me personally and also helping other people do the same.
I can verify that you are like that.
That's Sometimes I'm a real pain, they'll take me the other way.
I told you this week in an email, I wanted to clone you and put all the Roberts to work. Midnight. Yeah.
I think just the overall of like, we go camping and just in the last couple of years, there's no shoreline. I think that's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, this is, okay. Diane, how about you?
Professionally, I started my career really wanting to focus on access to safe drinking water. But as the climate crisis grew more serious every day, I kind of shifted into climate advocacy. And personally, I grew up skiing. I went skiing in our backyard.
Oh,
And I love snow so much, and it's hard to see mountains bare in the winter. And not always bare, you know, the season was ample, but warmer winters are sad, and I know that affects, you know, everything from salmon runs to, you know, going back to access to safe drinking water flowing to drier areas.
The long-term prediction for the whole ski industry is not very bright. Yeah. All right, this is turning into a depressing question, I'm sorry. Kathleen?
It's real.
Okay, well, I think I've got to do a hybrid too. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm spending my retirement working on pretty much nothing but climate change. But my closest like personal encounter with climate change impacts came in 2017 when my family and I were staying at the Fountain Grove Inn in Santa Rosa the night the Tubbs fire broke out. And we got out like moments before the place went up in flames.
wow.
And the Fountain Grove Inn was located right next to 101, just almost within sight of where it jumped over the freeway to the Coffee Park neighborhood. So they were closing down the freeway as we were like getting on it to get the hell out of there. That was a little too close for comfort.
Thank you. Emilio?
I don't know, for me was in the past affecting with the water in Santa Rosa. We usually go on summer to camping, but where the river was overflowed, we can stay over there, so we need to wait months or weeks to camping over there. That's things that affect me like that.
Yeah,
My regular stuff or being with my friend or with my family. Yeah.
you have a lot of outdoorsy people on this group, I can tell. Daniel, how about you?
Well, here in the Central Valley, with the importance of water, definitely one of the big things we've seen is the shortening of time where the snowpack in the mountains are able to melt. And so the amount of the ferocity and time frame in which water is coming down from the mountains has been changing dramatically in the past few years, which really challenges a lot of our infrastructure.
David, why don't you answer the question, please?
Well, professionally, climate change has become a major topic. You know, in addition to suing the oil and gas industry, which takes up a decent amount of time. You know, we formed one shoreline. You know, we dealt with the fires. It's you know, as far as the work, it has actually significantly changed the way that we do our work and what we focus on. So in some sense, I love the work, but I wish we didn't have to do it.
Yeah. Vanessa, how about you?
It's made me more civically minded,
Okay, that's
a positive thing.
that is a positive thing. We could use a few more positives. Okay, Kirsten, how about you?
I grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and the CZU fire was not in the immediate area where my dad still lives, but my dad was across the street from the evacuation zone. And on the other side of the evacuation zone, my mom was one block from the evacuation zone in Santa Cruz. So I was watching that that fire very carefully. I was turning into the CAL FIRE, incident updates twice a day to
Oh
watch
my
that.
goodness, so close to home. Wow,
Yeah.
so many experiences like that.
Mhm.
Well, and I'll just answer, I was gonna say something really dumb, like I got rid of my grass, but that doesn't sound like it fits.
That's important.
I guess climate change has kind of become sort of my calling in this act of life. It's made me into kind of a nerd, which I'm really proud of. So, it's made me a nerd and I'm glad. So, thank you. That was really, really good to hear about people's experiences and motivations. Wow. Okay, thank you.
Well, really, the reason this organization is in existence is because of climate change.
Yes,
That's
of
right.
course. Yeah. But I think, yeah, I like hearing about it from each person's perspective. What makes you excited to contribute, in this way. So, great. Is there any public comment on the question?
No public
No
comment.
public comment. All right. So let's move on our agenda to, oops, I just lost it, sorry. Okay, it's our presentation on reach codes is next, and that's going to be handled by Philippe via Zoom, right?
Correct.
Okay. Take it away, Blake.
Can you see me?
And
Oh, great to hear everyone's stories. Thanks for sharing that. I might lead with my own, if that's okay.
oh yeah, we love it.
So I'm an architectural engineer, started my career designing healthy heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. And our heating systems, we try to make it 68 degrees. And our air conditioning systems, we try to make it 72 degrees. For ventilation, we're really trying to keep it under 1,000 parts per million of CO2 in the space. And we do that by bringing in fresh air. So I have seen over my career that we've had to change how much air we bring into buildings in order to make sure that we can handle proper ventilation for the people in the building. So for instance, the room you're sitting in would have had more ventilation when it was designed now versus when it was originally designed. So that's just a direct CO2 in the atmosphere thing I've had to deal with. And on that topic, we're going to talk about HVAC systems and plumbing as well.
Okay.
So
Good
jumping into reach code.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. My name is Blake Hershaft. I'm the Building Electrification Programs Manager for Peninsula Clean Energy. I've been working on our Reach Codes program since its inception, 19. Start with what are Reach Codes. California has a very progressive building code and a very progressive energy code and green building code. They also allow local jurisdictions to pass even more progressive measures. Those are called reach codes, and they're usually related to energy efficiency. The ones our cities have been passing are primarily to deal with electric vehicle charging infrastructure and building electrification for new construction. So the goals of the opportunities we have are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide financial benefits, and support public health by reducing air pollution and emissions. Next. So I'll give you an update of where we are. While I'm on this slide, I know we have talked about this previously, but there was a lawsuit that occurred, and Berkeley was the first city with a reach code around all electric new construction. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decided that they could not legally pass that reach code. It was a little bit different than the ones that our jurisdictions have adopted. We've had 17 jurisdictions adopt all electric reach codes. They're a little bit different. So right now, as we sit, due to the Berkeley ruling, which we heard on January 4th, as I recall this year, 8 of our member agencies have paused enforcement of their reach codes, and we are actively talking to 10 about adopting a new type of reach code, and I'll go through those options right now. And I'm really here for questions you have about this. Some of them can be kind of confusing, so feel free to ask questions at any point. Go for it.
Blake, how are the reach codes in our jurisdiction different than the ones in Berkeley?
Really good question. For the most part, the biggest difference from my perspective is that Berkeley's was a municipal ordinance, whereas ours are part of the building code. So Berkeley's, you might not even necessarily define it as a reach code. You would just call that a municipal ordinance that banned gas infrastructure, whereas ours more required all electric new construction. So it isn't exactly the same thing, for that reason primarily.
Robert had a question too, yes.
Blake, which 8 cities have paused enforcement?
I see David has his hand up.
You can
No,
come
it's a
back.
good question. I'm gonna answer some of those. I'll give you a few. Well, one of them, I'm not sure if it's public that they've paused. The city of San Mateo is still recommending that you build all electric, but they have a statement on their website that you can read. Atherton, who has already had a city council study session on the matter. Menlo Park, who their Environmental Quality Commission has had a meeting and made some recommendations last week. I was not at that meeting. Pacifica is considering pausing, but all their permits have been all electric anyway, so it hasn't really been an issue. And the county of San Mateo. I don't know if I listed 8. A couple of those I have in my notes that they have potentially paused, but it's not super clear, so I don't want to necessarily state that.
Yeah, that's 5. And yeah, I get that they haven't made a statement. They don't quite. That's good. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, David had his hand up, just someone pick it, Michael. David, yes, you wanted to throw some
Thanks.
cities out there?
No, I'm not, I want to be clear, I'm not contradicting Blake. He is right. The reach code that was challenged in Berkeley is definitely different than the reach codes that we have in our jurisdiction. But legally, what the Ninth Circuit basically said was that you cannot prohibit gas appliances that have been approved under, you know, I'm being casual in my, but basically that have been rated, that have received a rating and are regulated gas appliances. You can't simply ban them. And that what Berkeley did by prohibiting all gas in building, what they were doing is they were banning approved gas appliances. And there's a general consensus. I'm not opining about any particular reach code, but there's a general consensus in the legal community that if you simply ban gas appliances, the Ninth Circuit decision says that's not okay. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I just don't want to create the impression there's disagreement as to the impact of the Ninth Circuit decision on the ordinances that we have in our county. There's general consensus that the Ninth Circuit case likely applies to them.
Thanks for that clarification. Michael, did you want to ask?
No, I answered it.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, so Blake, you continue, please.
Sure. And thank you, David. Please feel free to jump in at any point. I'm not a lawyer, just an engineer. Next slide. It does appear that our reach codes have helped have impact on the state. We've had an extraordinarily successful reach code program. The 2026 California Building Code update has requirements that commercial buildings, when they are replacing the rooftop equipment for certain types of air conditioners, that those become heat pumps. I have my trusty reversing valve here, which is a part that you can put in many air conditioners when you're manufacturing it and make it a heat pump. So they're basically requiring what's in their draft language now and will be adopted later this year, is that these will be required when you're replacing certain systems, very much like the system on our roof. So this is an inexpensive thing. I bought this for $120. But the systems on the roof of Peninsula Clean Energy are heat pumps. Our building happens to be all electric, which is great. So that's exciting. They're workshopping that at the moment, and I know a lot of people will be commenting on the draft California Energy Code language with relation to heat pumps. And if you're interested in making a comment, please reach out to me and I can give you more information. In 2027, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District is planning on requiring low NOx water heaters, essentially not allowing the sale of gas-fired tank type water heaters. That's the type of water heater that's in that building, except ours is electric, but it does have a tank type water heater. It's the most common type of water heater in single family homes in San Mateo County. And they're considering whether or not to maintain that date throughout this year. And in December or January, they'll make a decision. In 2029, that same rule will apply to gas furnaces. I don't have it on here, but in 2031, that will apply to even more types of equipment, like water heaters for large commercial buildings. I haven't put that on this slide because if the California Air Resources Board keeps their requirement for 2030, that would be that gas equipment is no longer allowed to be sold statewide. That would be a monumental change, similar to the Montreal Protocol, which was passed to help limit VOC emissions, which were harming the ozone layer, and has been a very successful, maybe arguably the most successful climate policy that we have come together on as a globe. In 2045, California has said they're going to achieve carbon neutrality. They have not defined that, but most reasonable definitions would mean that you wouldn't be using gas at that time. So that may be the end date for gas, possibly.
Like, we have a question.
I see it. Go for it.
Blake, maybe it's obvious, but it says tank type gas water heaters no longer sold in the area. So what about the instant on or instant gas water heaters?
They're not planned until 2031 for a few reasons. One reason is those ones can be, while they're expensive, they're more expensive than tank type to replace. So there's less incremental cost between a heat pump. A lot of times they're in small spaces where a tank won't fit. So they are going to be a little bit more challenging often. Sometimes they're in garages, and if you put a tank in, you lose a parking space. Sometimes they're in closets that are smaller than a tank.
So that's a named exclusion in the regulation?
Yes. That's actually they're planning on that for 2031. It's just if CARB passes this rule, that'll supersede that.
Sure.
But yeah, 2027, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District rules really deal with very specific pieces of equipment and specific years. If that helps.
Blake, we have another question from Diane.
Yeah, quick comment. So the air district standards are air emission standards. It's not a ban. And they apply to specific classes of equipment. So it's not an exemption for other classes. It's just an air emission standard that applies to tank water heater starting in 2027. I believe it's 0 NOx emissions, not low NOx. Low NOx is already in effect. We already have low NOx emission standards, and so does the South Coast, Southern California, and as well as San Joaquin Valley. So I think it's kind of important when we use the right terminology to talk about the air emission standards as air standards that protect our health and not a ban of a specific fuel type.
I apologize for using the term ban.
Okay,
Well, I said
trying to get the same terminology.
I said
Thank you.
I got a question too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen.
Sorry, just thought of, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, I remember you said they're still trying to decide whether they're gonna stick with the dates that they've got right now, the 2027 and 2029 dates. What about the CARB 2030 date? Is there gonna be some reconsideration of that? Is that already kind of baked in? How firm is that?
Mm.
There you go.
Oh, we lost you, Blake.
Scared.
Blake's gone.
Mm-mm.
While he's rejoining, can I comment to that?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the air district standard exists. It was adopted by the board.
Mhm.
The CARB standards have not yet been adopted. I believe the rules are in development now. And so there's not really a chance for reconsideration. It's kind of whether it will be adopted on time. Yeah.
Well, I have a question followed. I hear sometimes from people, and I'm not sure they get it right, that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District standard has not been adopted. It's a wait and see.
No, it was adopted.
It was
by
formally
their
adopted.
Board, I
It's not
believe
been-
unanimously, there was one abstention.
That's what I thought. I hear the term
Yeah.
final consideration is the term I hear.
No, there's reconsideration. They have an implementation roadmap where they can reconsider market conditions. They get updates every 2 years about the market conditions and they can decide whether they want to proceed or not based on market
So it's
conditions.
totally based on market.
You know, I think that David or Blake should come back. There's really
Blake's
specific
here.
language about the reconsideration structure. Mhm.
Blake, sorry to have lost you. Glad you're back.
I'll pull up that language while we're talking. I can answer to the CARB rule. Because I think that was asked as well, the 2030 date, right? I just wanted to add, so thank you for jumping in, Diane. I just also wanted to add that we're watching that very closely and helping as much as we can. We've had meetings with CARB. They had a call for public experts as well. So we will be on that committee to help guide that decision making. So excited about that.
Thank you.
Blake, I don't know if you heard or not, but can you, I just asked the question when Diane was speaking about how market conditions might be considered by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, depending on what they might do in 2027 and 29. What does that mean, market conditions?
I think he's on mute.
You're on mute, Blake.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I do want to give you a very exact answer on that, so maybe I'll get back to you as we're talking or at the end of my presentation, if that's okay.
Okay. Thanks.
I know I can tell you what they're looking into, which is doing a deeper dive on costs, where current water heaters are located and how difficult they'll be to replace. We're also Silicon Valley Clean Energy is helping lead an effort to go deeper into those subjects as well, and we're on that team. A consultant has been hired. Arup and Redwood Energy are helping us with that to kind of really know. Like, we think we have a good idea of how many of these water heaters are in our service territory, but we don't know how many are in a closet versus a garage. And there's cost implications of electrifying depending on what your existing conditions are. So that's some of the stuff we're looking into, and I know that the Air District is looking into as well. I think that's it for this slide. These are all really exciting developments. Next slide. But we really do believe that we still do need reach codes in our cities for a variety of reasons. One, to give a continued signal to the market, the local construction market, to continue to exercise local control. The CARB rules and the BACMED rules don't touch all appliances. For instance, pool heaters, clothes dryers, those types of appliances. Local reach codes enable state agencies to move forward. It's helpful if other local jurisdictions have tried something first. And then if we wait to 2030, we miss a lot of opportunity to save emissions. So the more action we can do sooner, the better. This is the reason we're still supporting supporting our jurisdictions and considering reach codes, even though California is moving quickly in the right direction. Next slide. So now I'm going to get into the nitty gritty on the two model codes we have up on our website. for jurisdictions to consider. The website is bayareareachcodes.org, and those are available to see. I'll walk through them pretty quickly, and please jump in for questions at any point. Next slide. The first is the energy performance approach, what we've labeled the energy performance approach. Within the reason the lawsuit, the ruling of the lawsuit was that the Berkeley ordinance ran afoul of the Energy Policy Conservation Act of 1975, which says that, and there's a ruling that if there's a minimum, it sets a lot of minimum requirements for appliance efficiencies across the country. So it's an important act for energy efficiency and decarbonization. The problem is local states or cities are not allowed to then require more efficiency on a particular appliance. So if EPCA says an air conditioner has to be at least this efficient, a city can't come say it needs to be more efficient. And that's what the main problem is. Within that law is a specific exemption that if you use a points-based or a scoring-based metric that allows, you can require more efficiency in your buildings as long as you allow a pathway for the minimum efficient appliance. In this case, the minimum efficient appliance we're talking about is a gas appliance. So how this would work, when a developer is building a new building, they could choose to go all electric or mixed fuel. If they go all electric, they can just follow the rest of the building code. If they go mixed fuel, they would need to add additional efficiency or solar or battery storage. There are choices there. And this would all be determined via energy modeling. So I have a background in energy modeling. It's basically a computer that runs a thermodynamic simulation of what a building would use, and you can change how efficient the windows are or how much insulation's in the walls and what kind of water heaters they use, and it spits out an efficiency rating. Obviously, the all-electric building using Peninsula Clean Energy electricity would be would be very clean and have significant GHG savings, and the mixed fuel building with additional efficiency would have some additional greenhouse gas emission savings. On the next slide, I'm going to show you how this would look on building plans that would be submitted to a permit department. Oh, I'll do that in 2 slides. Sorry. One issue with the energy performance approach is that it only covers certain appliances. So within the energy code, appliances that help your building maintain a certain space condition or give you hot water are treated differently than what are called process loads, appliances that you use directly, like a range or a pool heater or a fireplace or a dryer. So with the energy performance approach, we can really only regulate or help to regulate the ones on the left, space heating and water heating. The good thing is that's 80–90% of the building emissions in single family homes, and even more in most commercial buildings. The bad news is there are still these other appliances that we can't regulate with this approach. Next slide. All right, my exciting form. So when you run an energy model for a permit in the state of California, you use a software called CBEC Res, and it spits out this compliance table that you then attach to your building plans, drawings, blueprints, whatever you prefer to call them. This requirement will require that this one item, source energy, EDR1, so your reach code would say instead of that needing to meet at least 0, it needs to meet at least 4 or 9. And what happens is when you run an all-electric building, you're going to automatically score higher within the software than when you run a mixed fuel building. So that's why in order to meet this higher threshold for a mixed fuel building, you're going to need to add these extra efficiency measures. It's a little complicated to explain to someone who's not in the building field. It is pretty easy to understand for a permit department because they have been seeing this same form since 2019 and in similar forms for as long as I've had a career. So since 2006. So that's how this one would work. Any questions?
You see.
All right. It's a little confusing. So let's go to the next one. The air quality approach. This one is a lot more straightforward to explain. Instead of focusing on the fuel, which is natural gas, the focus really here is on the emissions of that fuel. We talk a lot about how unsafe it is to cook over a fossil fuel fired range without having the hood on. And we've also discussed, well, we haven't discussed this, but we have carbon monoxide detectors in homes for a variety of reasons, but the main reasons are water heaters and space heaters. So that's because we're having indoor combustion. One of the biggest parts of the plumbing code is about the vent that comes off of your water heater, because if that vent isn't properly built, bad things could happen. Carbon monoxide poisoning can kill you. So it's really focusing on those emissions that are related to the imperfect combustion. An air quality approach would require that you do not have equipment that burns fossil fuels within your home, which has benefits both for the indoor air quality and also for outdoor air quality. What's interesting about this one, Los Altos Hills recently adopted this as their policy, as their REACH code. New York City has a similar one. It's more focused on greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide.
Oh, yeah.
Blake, Los Altos Hills recently adopted the energy air quality approach, but didn't they also have a whole bunch of exceptions in the ordinance?
Yes, I can pull them up in front of me. The main exception was about gas cooking, which is an exception that a lot of our cities have included in their ordinances over the years, especially their first ones in 2019. That's because at the time, it's becoming less true, but at the time, a lot of people really loved their gas stoves. I have heard you can pry my gas stove from my cold, dead hands, as an example, from a previous coworker. So they do have that exception in there.
Well, you know how I feel about it. This is just me talking, how I feel about exceptions. Pretty soon you don't have an ordinance. That's just, I'll say that.
That's it. That's interesting. I have seen some from 2019 to 2022. We have seen for things that are hard to build and the building industry hasn't figured out yet. This is just a counterpoint. An exception to give the building industry a few years to figure it out for like a technical problem, and the gas range is not one, but for a technical issue, we have seen that work out okay. But I agree with you that if it's a whole list, it might not work as well. The benefit of this one is that it's. Go ahead.
Blake, my whole thing is.
Yeah, go for it.
We're out of time. So we give the industry 5 years to figure it out.
Oh, you're right.
We're out of time.
I do agree with that. I did want to mention a legal component to this. So the benefit of this is I find it to be a little bit easier to explain at the permit desk, and it can handle more appliances. But there is a big detriment, and David is welcome to jump in if he'd like. When you're reading the Berkeley versus California Restaurant Association legal opinion, this could look similar. So while the other one is clearly follows an exemption pathway within EPCA, this does not. So we are asking each jurisdiction to consider their own legal analysis, speak to their city attorney, and we've just provided these two as support resources.
Well put, Blake.
Thank you. All right, I think I do have one more slide on this one, and then I have a summary slide of the two to compare, which, so here's the Los Altos Hills ordinance. we only have 2 of your exceptions in there. I wish I took a different screenshot for this slide. This is in Cal Green rather than the California Energy Code. And that's about it. Most of the reason I have this here is to show how simple this ordinance was. The other one was a little more complicated to explain. There's not much there. There's not a whole lot of text, which is nice. Next slide.
Oh, wait a second, Blake, we have a question.
Go for it.
Yeah, like what's the difference between Cal Green and the California building code?
Really good question. The California Building Code is, I think it's 13 volumes. Each one is a 3-inch 3-ring binder. I don't have any in this office, but I used to just keep them right next to my face when I was designing buildings. You really have to follow it. So there's a mechanical code, a plumbing code, an electrical code, more codes, housing codes. And then there's an energy code, which is where most of our REACH codes have fallen. And then there's a green building code. That's where electric vehicle charging station and other requirements that are about green buildings, but might not necessarily be under the purview of the California Energy Commission, tend to fall. So we, in our REACH code work, we really focus, we look at the other codes, the plumbing code and the mechanical code and the electrical code are also important, but we really focus on the energy code and Cal Green.
Wait, what was Cal Green?
Cal Green's the California Green Building Code. It's a weird name. It's just one part of a 13-volume building code.
Oh, okay, thank you. Get it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there's an energy part, there's a mechanical part, and there's a green. There's one just for green.
Got it.
Yeah. Anything else on this one? Then I got my comparison slide, and that's the one where I'm expecting any additional questions. All right. So the description I've kind of given you, advantages, the energy performance approach really helps mitigate legal risk, can provide an all-electric cost-effective pathway, and the enforcement process is already in place related to the compliance margin. It's part of every new construction project. The air quality code uses the Clean Air Act authority rather than energy policy as a focus, can regulate all emitting appliances, has a direct benefit to indoor air quality and health, high impact on emissions reductions. They both have a high impact on emissions reductions. The challenges to each approach, the air quality approach is legally untested, and I gave you the potential reading and the similarities there with other policies. And it's a potentially new enforcement approach that cities might not have dealt with. The challenges to the energy performance approach, really that limited to only space and water heating. And it might have slightly lower carbon savings than regulating all the appliances, as you can imagine. Who's done it? On the energy performance approach, our consultant works with other cities, which is great because we can share resources and lessons learned. Santa Cruz, San Jose, and San Luis Obispo have all adopted that already. For the air quality approach, Los Altos Hills is the California city that has gone that direction.
Question.
Yeah.
Blake, a question. You talk about under advantage of energy performance mitigates legal risk by allowing methane gas pathways. It
Yes.
seems by allowing methane gas pathways, you're allowing a gas that's even worse than carbon into the environment.
Yes, we use methane gas instead of natural gas, but in order to use this exemption and have a more in order to use the exemption within EPCA, you really do have to allow an opportunity if someone wants to build with those gas furnaces. So this energy performance approach really just makes it harder, but it does
Okay.
not make it impossible. It is not an all-electric new construction requirement. It is certainly an all-electric new construction, it pushes you in that direction, but it does give you an out. You would just have to make a really efficient building with
So
extra.
just- In this
Uh,
case, methane is equivalent to natural gas.
Correct. We use the term methane gas because there's different terminology for natural gas. You could call it methane gas. In England, they call it fossil gas. It's meant to mean natural gas on this slide. At Peninsula Clean Energy, we say methane gas instead of natural gas.
Natural gas is essentially a marketing term from the gas
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
It's natural.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to note when San Francisco adopted their REACH codes, and we talk with them, I talk with them maybe once a month. They adopted two codes at the same time. One was very similar to the energy performance approach. They would call that their belts and suspenders approach. So they adopted both in case one was legally, and they put on the belt in case the suspenders broke. So they adopted one in case the other one was legally challenged. That is another thing that has been raised, that a city could potentially adopt both of these at the same time. I guess I should add one more note. At Atherton's council study session, which I watched, the city council requested maybe considering also requiring for large renovation projects that pre-wiring would be done, so that if you were going to do a renovation and the walls were open where your water heater is, even if you keep it as gas, maybe you require that a 240 volt circuit is run. So it's interesting that they're kind of asking staff to come back with some existing building requirements as part of their readoption process. And other cities could potentially do the same thing. Diane.
Diane, yeah, go ahead.
I have a couple questions, and then I wondered if we're gonna do discussion afterwards. I wanted to bring a recommendation. Knowing this is a discussion item for today.
Yeah.
But can we bring it back as an action item? This group. And in part because our building electrification work group is disbanded right now. And I hope we reconvene, but we don't know, and it could take some time. So I did want to request that we, as a full CAC, consider an action item on this. As soon as we can, to make a recommendation. Let me just put a pin in that as a discussion point. I have some questions for Blake about how much analysis has been done on the actual benefits, emission and health benefits from the different approaches, looking at new construction, like how much new construction is there that can be influenced, and relative to I would say new baseline, meaning like with new Title 24 energy codes that are adopted, how would new REACH codes influence those buildings more to be electric and to reduce emissions? And then how does that compare to policies on existing buildings? And I'm asking that because I'm just wondering if we're expending all this effort and political capital for new policies, are we getting a lot of bang for our buck? Are we getting a lot of emission reductions and making a big difference in new construction versus existing buildings? And I think REACH code served a wonderful purpose and did a lot of good. I'm just wondering if we just are kind of succumbing to inertia of, let's continue doing what we know and doing what we've been doing without kind of stopping to assess, is this still worthwhile? Are we going to get a lot of benefit from it? I'm not trying to poo-poo it. I'm just saying, could we analyze the numbers and look at how many tons of carbon reductions are we looking at and what are the health benefits? And maybe that's been done and you can share an analysis.
That is a very good question. Thank you so much. And yes, I have done a lot of that analysis has already been done. We haven't done the math to answer your questions exactly, but we're 90 to 95% the way there. It wouldn't be hard to take it another step. And you're right. So as far as existing buildings versus new construction, in any given year, we only add 1% to our number of homes or total commercial square footage approximately. So 99% of buildings are existing, and roughly 99% of emissions from buildings year over year are from existing buildings. You know, when you take it out 10 years, you're talking about 10% addition to floor area and total number of single family homes. But existing buildings are have a much bigger impact. But I'll go back and run those numbers, especially if it's, I guess it doesn't need to be an action item or a recommendation, but I can I would maybe have the RICAPS team do that at Rincon.
I would just comment here that the strategic point is actually what happens outside of our service territory by having models established here.
I did not understand that question, Rob. That answer.
So we have the fact that our service territory and Santa Clara, much of Santa Clara County, through Silicon Valley Clean Energy's efforts, as well as Palo Alto and San Jose, really were the pace setters for other cities adopting REACH codes and creating a model for the state to adopt more aggressive codes. And that's the strategic value of establishing pace setting models in our service territory. Obviously, existing buildings are very important, but that's really the strategic logic behind advancing these codes.
Just a quick follow-up. I would love to see that as part of the analysis of what the carbon benefits are, focusing on new construction versus existing, and how those benefits can kind of spill out beyond our service territory.
Yeah, I just want to caution that this is going to be a judgment call. I mean, there's not a precise, math that one could establish for how many cities are adopting codes outside of our service territory and how exactly state codes are going to evolve. What we do know is that the REACH codes to date have had a major impact in the state codes and did set the pace for other jurisdictions to adopt their REACH codes. And right now, the reality is that REACH codes are kind of dead in the water until a new set of models are actually established and other cities have something to look towards.
Maybe I'm missing something, but following on to the point that Diane raised and your response, it seems like we could have an even bigger impact by being leaders and doing something about existing buildings. I'm not sure exactly what.
Clearly, and that's something, and Blake, you can speak to the logic here, but if cities don't have a stepping stone with new construction, they're unlikely to start moving on existing construction. And that's my personal feeling. But Blake, you can comment.
I agree with that 100%, which is why we started with new construction. Last year, we did see a lot of movement on existing buildings, maybe 2 years ago now. Menlo Park brought forward a potential ordinance that did not pass. Half Moon Bay brought a very progressive existing building policy that didn't quite pass. San Mateo and Portola Valley do both have very cost-effective existing building measures that are under implementation right now. I've been talking to them about how they've been going. So we did see some movement there. I completely agree with Raphael that without a new construction on the book, it seems difficult to for a jurisdiction to then start passing existing building policies. I could see an agency adopting something though at the same time, like what Atherton has requested. We do have a whole list of cost-effective existing building measures that we think make a lot of sense. So those may be considered by some of the more progressive jurisdictions.
Robert has a question.
Blake, you said you have a list of existing building measures. Is that available?
Yes.
Did you make that available to us?
Yes, sorry, yes, and I will get that to you.
Thank you.
The easiest one, my favorite, and that's why I have this silly piece of brass, is that when we buy air conditioners, they're heat pumps. Is one that's just really cost effective. So is pre-wiring. As you start to get into other ones like water heating, it really depends on the incentives, whether it's cost equivalent to gas and whether you can require something like that.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to make that available. I've made the slides.
Are there any other questions for Blake? No, guys, that Diane would like to bring the issue back to the group. Okay. Make note of that. Are there any public comments or questions of Blake?
I don't see any on Zoom right now.
Okay. Blake, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Terrific. All right, let's see. Next item on our agenda is working group reports. Oh, I'm sorry.
So that this is a discussion item. How do we go about asking that it be taken up, following what Diane said?
Oh.
Can we take this up in the future? How do we do that?
Made a note of it under list of items to that you'd like to have come back.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've made a note of it under the list of items that you would like to have come back at a future meeting.
How soon would that be?
Well, how we create the agenda is during the upcoming topics for discussion. You come up with your list of topics you would like to have come back. Then we bring that back. Can you hear me better? Okay.
It's me, it's not you.
All right, and then we discuss that at an internal agenda setting meeting in which I can look ahead to what's coming up at future executive committee and board meetings. Then we prioritize what we think is going to be the most time sensitive items to come to you. And then we send the draft agenda to Cheryl and Jason for approval and before we approve it. So that's the process we go through. So we start with your list of what you'd like to have come back. But if there is something that's super timely, it may take precedence.
But it sounds like you'd like to request that we start this one and get it back as soon as possible.
2-year-olds circled in red.
Duly noted.
Okay. Okay, now we'll go on to our topic of working group reports. And these can be sort of informal. We just wanted to hear from the groups as they are wrapping up their reports. Robert, do you want to say anything about the building electrification group?
I could.
Oh.
We met, we submitted the form that you asked for and you got it. And we talked about things for next year. What's the process moving forward with that? Will that go into some hopper and then we decide, or that go? Tell me the process for that.
That is the next agenda item, actually, today.
Oh, okay. I really have nothing else to say. Diane's there. Diane probably did.
I want to add something. Huge thank you to Robert for his participation in the whole process with the RFP last summer to select a building electrification implementer.
Yes.
That was on the list. Thank you.
That small thing that Robert did so well. I mean, really was part of the process, which was extensive and contributed a lot. Robert has a lot of expertise to add.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. I really enjoyed that. So.
Nice.
Don't anybody know.
And Kathleen was supposed to do the same thing for the GovBE. Oh my gosh, thank you. That got a little delayed but should be starting soon. And I'm really thrilled that Kathleen's gonna do that. I think similar to Robert, that she'll be a huge asset to that process and everyone's excited for that to get started. Do you want to add anything?
No, I was just good. Robert was kind of at the beginning end of it, selecting the contractor, right, to run the program. And the piece I'm going to be working on is actually selecting the committee that's gonna be making recommendations about who actually gets the awards. You know, the local governments or schools that get the money. So he's at the beginning, I'm at the end of it.
Sounds good to me.
How about the EAI?
So that one, we haven't had a meeting, but we've met twice, I think, at least. Once I think I reported out a couple months ago, we talked about the language and access policies. There were some early drafts that Kirsten shared with us. And then working on like a framework that PCs working on related to DEAI for decision making.
Great, those are the two big deliverables I have under our DI action plan, so it's great to get your feedback. And I am happy to share that we will incorporate a bunch of your feedback and just send that out to the rest of the staff for feedback today.
Michael, do you want to talk about solar and storage?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Our working group is composed of 5 people. Me, Sam, Gail, Daniel, and me. And our charge is to basically look at other successful residential solar plus storage projects around the country and see what Peninsula Clean Energy can learn from them. So particularly Jason and Kathleen have done a lot of research. I've done some, Daniel's done some, Gail's done some. And we found a lot of very interesting things. We're just in the process of compiling our report. But we have found that a lot of states, you know, people think that California's in the lead around climate change strategies. And there's a lot of stuff going on in unexpected places. Vermont, for example, is doing a lot of very good stuff. Colorado, Hawaii, North Carolina, Puerto Rico. There's a lot of very interesting projects that involve a whole array of things, various incentives to help people move to solar and storage, ways to have bulk buy-in, you know, various ways to pay for to make it cost effective to do more solar and storage, microgrid strategies, virtual power plant strategies. So there's a whole array of different approaches that we're finding, and some of them may or may not be that relevant to our situation, but we're going to share them with the staff in a couple of weeks. And hopefully if there's something particularly interesting, we might report again on it here. Kathy, you have something to add?
No, I think we covered it. I think Peter may have something to add.
Yes, hi folks. Can everybody hear me all right?
We can.
Well, good evening to everybody. So I've been working closely with the working group on formulating our approach to this research task. And so far they've drummed up a lot of really helpful resources. So I wanted to thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the final product here, which will inform our forthcoming residential storage program strategy. We also wanted to flag that we are developing a 2-part distributed energy resources plan. The first part is really, what are we already working on and why? So what is immediately before us? And then the next part is a longer term consideration around our distributed energy programs. And I really think that the findings in this working group project will be able to inform our long-term strategy around residential solar and storage, how we can best utilize load controls within that program, what are some best practices associated with finance and ownership. We're going to start a residential storage program proactively and very expeditiously in response to board attention on that subject. But I also wanted to mention that, in the long run, that program is going to change over time. So I wanted to highlight that there's a really strong opportunity for the working group to get its fingerprints on that area.
Cool. Great. Did Raphael want to jump in too?
Anything from you, Raphael, or are we good?
Maybe the one other thing is in this first part, which will be going to the board here this month. You'll be hearing about stuff that basically you've already heard about already. So the government solar program, that we had a residential storage program, and we're planning a new one about EV managed charging. All of these things are pieces that we have talked individually, both with the advisory committee and with the board. And all we're doing here in this delivery of the part one of the plan is putting all that together to talk about how these pieces are all related to each other and give a little bit of a forward-looking glance, if you will, of some near-term stuff, again, that we've already talked to folks here before, including adding battery storage onto the government solar program and things like that.
Thank you. Right, let's see, have we not covered EV managed charging? Kathleen, was there anything additional? No, we had Phil here, and talked about it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything new. I think he's probably already filled us in. There were, I think, some surprises in some of the information he had gathered. We were kind of providing some feedback early on. We've had a meeting in the last month. I could be wrong, yeah, so I don't think there's anything new.
Education initiatives with Daniel.
Yes, hello. So we've met a few times to kind of talk about the different efforts PCE was undertaking throughout its service territory to promote the fight against climate change, as well as making sure that people are aware of PCE and its services and how it assists them. In particular, I've gone out to Las Banas with our new representative to make sure we can effectively communicate with residents over in Las Banas.
Thank you. Right, I think that covers everybody. Are there any public comments about the working group reports?
I don't see any public comments online.
Thank you. All right, then we will go right into ideas for working groups for 2024-25.
Okay, so Robert, here is your item. This is where we start talking about what we're going to do for our next round of working groups. So the process tends to be a little bit iterative. We ask staff for ideas that they would like help with. We ask you for ideas that you're interested in. And then we kind of meld it all together and then ask the staff about the CAC ideas, ask you about the staff ideas again, and then create a list. And then we will bring it to the board for their blessing. And then once it's been approved by the board, then we can recruit you all to join the new working groups. So any questions about the process? Okay, great. So we have asked the staff for ideas. We've got a couple, ideas I think you're really going to like. There's been an idea for a transportation program strategy working group for asking getting feedback on strategic questions about used EV rebates, e-bike programs, and how to make those more customer centric and easier for customers, and make sure we getting the levels of rebates right. Those types of questions. There's been another idea from the marketing team for a branding and marketing strategy working group. We are working with some branding strategy consultants this year on updating our brand and becoming more customer centric, and we'd love your feedback on that. There's also an idea on the working group on the future of Eco 100, which is of course our 100% renewable product. But as we move closer to renewable, even though it's not, the last board we actually had we've moved out the date for meeting our 100% renewable goal. It was originally going to be 2025, but due to market conditions, we've we've moved that out a little bit. But that said, eventually Eco 100 is going to need to transition to something else. And so we'll be looking ahead to that. And so we could set up a working group to discuss that. What do you think of those ideas, and what additional ideas might you have?
Got all kinds of questions. Michael, please.
Well, I have one that may be off the wall. I was thinking the other day about the fact that artificial intelligence is sweeping the country, both for good and bad.
The world.
It's the world, right, not just the country. And I was wondering, how can artificial intelligence benefit Peninsula Clean Energy? I can think right away, for example, the branding and marketing strategy. There may be some interesting ideas there. But I could imagine, you know, I would really think about solar plus storage. There might be some artificial intelligence ideas pulling together different perspectives that might work. This may be crazy. So, but it just occurred to me in one of my moments of personal thoughts that AI might be something that could be used beneficially by Peninsula Clean Energy.
Tried it. To write I was writing up a short book for 4th through 6th graders to explain electricity and solar powered flashlights. And I was trying to write it at a 4th grade reading level, which is very difficult. And so I wrote out a draft, and then I asked AI for a draft. It didn't necessarily do any better, but is there, you know, because they were pulling from, I'm getting off topic here, but they were pulling from existing kids' energy a curriculum and explanations, which are written above grade level generally, which is why I was writing my own and not copying them. So it's only as good as what's already out there on the web. But I agree. I think it has some interesting applications for marketing. So that's an interesting idea. Thank you, Michael.
I want to stress, I don't have any expertise in the field at all.
So you don't want to share it.
But I might be interested in learning about
it. Duly noted. Thank you.
Okay, Kathleen, you had an idea.
Yeah, I would like to see the solar and storage group continue on, but maybe be reconstituted, expanded to include more than just solar. I have seen examples of very, very, very small scale wind projects. And I think I brought this up a year or two ago and didn't get a whole lot of enthusiastic response, but I keep seeing things and thinking about this and thinking there must be something there. So I would like us to do a little bit of investigating wind power options as well.
Okay.
That could be a separate group, or that could be part of the
Okay.
distributed energy expanded group.
Robert.
The building electrification group, we met and we submitted a memo to you. It's through Vanessa. We recommend the 3 programs next year. Monitor and provide feedback on the government PE program, including selection of projects of the direct install and turnkey. That's really a continuation of what was going on last year. And that would be Kathleen doing that again. Second one, advise.
For the sake of the notes, what was the first one again, Michael?
Just say it a little bit more slowly, please.
You know, my family is a bunch of auctioneers. Does that surprise you? Monitor and provide feedback on the government PE program, including selection of projects and the direct install and turnkey programs. It's basically what we were doing last year.
Okay.
And Kathleen would continue to do that, as we talked about earlier. Did I get that right?
Kathleen on GovBE and the whole group on the turnkey and direct install programs. Those 3 were smushed together.
Okay.
Which
Right.
programs? Which program did you say?
I'm sorry.
Which programs?
Which program?
It's the government PE program and projects in the direct install and turnkey programs, so 3. Right? Am I saying this right?
They're BE,
BE.
BE, building electrification.
That's why you're confusing it.
Yeah, and I wrote this then.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's.
I've heard two. I heard feedback on government building electrification.
Government building electrification program, including selection of projects
Yeah.
and the direct install and turnkey programs. The three.
Oh, okay,
That's
thank
number
you.
one in the memo, right?
Number one in the memo,
Meaning continue what we were doing.
continue what we're doing already. I'm sorry I screwed that up.
No, no.
You can get the language, I think, from looking at our report, because we put
Yes,
the
yes.
recommendations in our.
I sent this memo to Vanessa. The second one is advise on how municipalities can remove barriers to building electrification, such as exploring how to ease the burden of permitting for electrification, how to promote incentives, and how to educate residents. So it's the three, how to promote, how to educate, and how to ease the burden of permitting all around building electrification. And that would be a way to remove barriers to electrification. Okay. And the third one would be advise on policy and program for cities to adopt policies for building electrification and decarbonization, such as conducting research and reports on successful program design and implementation for future success in electrification.
Yes.
Just basically advice on how to build electrification policy.
Yes.
Yeah, so advise on policy and programs. So advise as an ongoing, not just advice, but advise on an ongoing process.
But how would that be a working group? It would need to have a specific time. Oh, I should give you a little bit of definition of working groups also as a background. So working groups are, they are.
A term.
Thank you,
Project.
thank you. They're legally, they have to meet three requirements. They have to be made up of less than a quorum of the community advisory committee, because if it's more than a quorum, then it's an official meeting, as you learned in your Brown Act training. So it has to be less than a quorum. It has to be, has to have a specific term, like the working group has to end at some point. Otherwise, it's an ongoing Brown Act meeting. And then it has to have a specific task. So we can form a meeting, like a working group, like for the next, like, say, 9 months is often how we do it, with a specific task, and then the working group ends. We can then form another working group with a kind of similar topic, but it would have, we reform the working groups, and this is to maintain compliance with the Brown Act. So just a little background there.
Well,
Yeah,
well said.
question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, dude.
If the working group didn't complete its task and needs more time, can it be extended? And if the memo recommending the working group has already been submitted, can that be changed?
Oh.
Yes and yes.
Oh, good.
Okay, so
Okay,
so you want to pull this one back?
well, can you tell us more about the amendments we need to make it relevant? You're saying that maybe we need to take this offline?
Oh, I don't think I said any of them weren't specific enough.
Well,
No,
if
no,
we
no,
have.
no, I'm sorry, maybe I.
Well, you
maybe I
did say
misspoke.
something about the working group needs a task.
The working group needs a task. So in the working group plan that the board approved last year, specific tasks are laid out. And that's what you're reporting out on in your memos. So that's what I meant, like, so the specific task has already been laid out, and I'm sure your reports are fine.
But I think what they're asking is, like
Going
Robert
forward.
was reading from the report we submitted, which said something about, recommending that we advise, have a working group that advises on something next year. And so we might want to reframe that
Into
to
a
give a specific task.
Specific,
Yeah.
I think we've used advise in the past. I think that can be, I don't know, is advice on something, is that specific enough, David?
I need a little bit more context. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, maybe we could share that memo and get the feedback, and
Well, they
then if we
have it,
need to amend it, we can.
Or it could probably be refined later as the work groups are actually being formed.
well, that's the question. Should we just go up and refine it? now?
Well, I'd hold off because first we're gonna take your memo and go back, sounds like to the programs team and kind of discuss your recommendations with them. Because the other part of the working groups, how we've always done them, we don't have to do them this way in the future, is that it's always been a working group between CAC members and staff. So the other part of how we form working groups is it has to be something that's genuinely useful to the staff. So that's where we'll go back to the staff and say, what do you think about these proposals? I mean, I suppose in the future, we could have CAC working groups that don't have a staff liaison. But in how we've always done it is that there's a staff liaison that works with CAC members. And so we have to go back, so we go back to the staff and just make sure, is this, within your department's priorities for the next year to have a staff person working on this working group topic.
Feedback?
Well, I think
We need to wait until.
we're gonna iterate a lot on this and actually figure out like which ones make it to the next round and then what the task should be.
Well, some didn't refine it enough, whereas somebody else had already refined it. If we have things we have to do in order to make it legal, we didn't do that. We sure would like to go back and read.
I think you're just making a recommendation. This is not, we're not forming the working group.
Right, yeah.
If anything, sometimes it's helpful to have the topic and the staff put the action on it that they need.
As long as it's flexible moving forward, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that was well said, Desiree. I think like just getting your ideas out there.
Well, get this in. Jason was going on vacation. He said, get it in. So I got it in.
Great.
Well, looking at it, maybe I shouldn't have put it in so quickly, but as long as it's flexible going forward, I'm fine.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's fine. And Desiree gave a good explanation, like, we're just getting your topics here, then we'll take it back to staff. Often the staff will, refine topics a little bit based on what their needs are coming up and what staff priorities are. And then we find the happy mix between the staff needs and your interests, and we'll come back to you with what we think that is.
Okay.
So you've done all you need to do right now.
Okay. Well, I'm just worried about I went too fast.
No, I don't be worried. I think everything's fine.
Thank you.
Were there any other ideas from this group? Off the wall, on the wall? Anything that's been in the back of your minds? Okay. You have enough to work with there?
We sure do. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
So what are the next steps on this?
Is that we will take your ideas back to the departments that would be relevant to your ideas and discuss it with them, and then we'll come back to you with a refined list.
All right, that sounds great. Are there any public comments on this discussion?
No public,
All right.
no raise hands.
Okay, thank you. We're going back to Kirsten now for the Community Advisory Committee recruitment process update.
Yes, so as you're well aware, because you have gone through this process yourselves and you have been the benefits of being, you have been selected in what have generally been pretty competitive processes. You're familiar with what the process has been in the past. We put out the proposal, or we put out the call for recruitment for our CAC members, usually around end of January, early February. Leave the application open to the end of March. Go through the applications, interview. We get a subcommittee of our board to interview the applicants, and then we'll recommend to our that subcommittee will make a recommendation to the board. The board will approve that generally, and then those folks will be seated. In the previous year, we had 22 applications, far more than we had, seats available. And it was such a good applicant pool. It hurt, it really hurt to say no to a bunch of these folks. So this year, Vanessa and I floated the idea with our board of, let's not open this up again every year. Like, how about we open it up every other year? And then go back to the list from the previous year. It'll save us work. We can go back to a list of people who are clearly interested. And let's try that out. It seems like, there's some interest in that approach from our board. And so we are working out the details of that with our board, and we're working out the details of recommending some folks from our previous year's applicant pool.
And so what might be the timeline on that? Like, so you would recommend people and then they'd be interviewed by this group of the board, subgroup of the board?
Since it's a new process, it's still kind of being worked out with that subgroup. I don't think they've indicated a need to interview folks again.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I haven't heard from all the members yet.
Okay.
So this is a new process. We'll start kind of working out. I think the timing for seating new members is going to be similar. It'll be June.
Okay. Yeah, Michael, sorry. Go ahead, Michael, and then we'll.
Well, what Kirsten says makes sense to me. Particularly assuming that you had some really good applicants who didn't get in.
So many.
Sure.
Everybody was good, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody was good.
Great.
Yeah, everybody was qualified. It was great.
Kathleen, you lived it.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you've already talked with any of the previous applicants to find out how many of them would still be interested and available.
We have reached out, we have a short list, and we've reached out to a couple of them to see if they're still available and interested.
And
so far so good.
Okay.
Folks still interested.
Good.
Cool. Robert,
I favor the idea too, what you're proposing. San Mateo went through this with their Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission. And they went back to previous folks and they were still available, and they saved the whole process, and they got some great people. It sounds like that's what you're going to do too.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that process.
Great.
For what it's worth.
good deal. Okay, wonderful. Does that complete your report?
It does.
Is there any public comment on Kirsten's presentation or discussion?
No public comment.
Okay. All right, boy, we're going back to you again, Kirsten, with the marketing and community liaison update.
Yes, okay, great. So Earth Day, Earth Month is upon us, as Cheryl can attest. And Peninsula Clean Energy has been invited to work quite a number of events. And we hit you up for some of those last month, but I'm going to have a look at our open shifts and give you an update on where we may need help coming up. So let's see, we have open. If anybody is available this Sunday and would like to join us in South San Francisco, there is an Earth Day there. It's inside, and we're looking for someone to help out with the afternoon shift from 2:30 to 4:30. No, it's last minute, but that was been a particularly difficult one to fill. So I'm going to let that one percolate for a moment. And then Cinco de Mayo in East Palo Alto on Sunday, May 5th, actually on Cinco de Mayo. We are looking for someone to help me with the afternoon shift from 3 o'clock to 7 p.m. And again, East Palo Alto on Sunday, May 5th.
So that's an Earth Day festival too?
That is a Cinco de Mayo, like Mexican Heritage.
Sure. But they're inviting Earth Day or, environmental groups or.
I should have phrased this as spring events.
Okay.
Spring events. They're not all Earth Day events. They're spring events. Like we do like a Dia del Nino event in San Bruno in the park. It's a super good one.
Gotcha.
That's like the one event where I hand out like English, Spanish, and Chinese brochures, all at the same event. It's so good. So this is spring events.
Okay, gotcha.
We just did like an Easter egg hunt in Los Banos. That was like one of the busiest events I've ever done.
Okay.
Everybody was there and wanted to talk with us because we have good swag. So it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we try to hit up the environmental folks and we try to help the people who won't necessarily go to an Earth Day because sometimes it's even more important to talk to them. So yeah, that's a Cinco de Mayo event. And then we're also recruiting for San Carlos Hometown Days. We're gonna work that Saturday, May 18th. Again, we're looking for someone to help out in the afternoon shift from 1:30 to 6 p.m.
Okay, I'll do that one.
Oh, Kathleen.
I live 2 blocks away from the
yay.
festival. I can't turn that down.
I think you're a San Carlos resident, is that correct?
Yeah, literally, I live 2 blocks from the park where the whole thing is held.
Yay.
So what time?
Okay, so that is 1:30 to 6 afternoon shift on Saturday.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Good.
You'll be working with me. Great. Anyone interested in the Cinco de Mayo on May 5th in East Palo Alto?
Might be able to do that one.
Oh, fantastic. I think that will be fun as well. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Going back to this Sunday, anybody interested in the last minute plans?
I can do that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Desiree. Okay. All right, thank you so much. You all have really stepped up. Appreciate it.
And you're still having it on April 20th at the San Mateo Library?
Yep.
Are you volunteering for that,
Yeah,
Robert?
we already have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since I live close to it, like Catherine.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Robert and Kathleen, for working that way. Really appreciate it.
What time did you want us there?
I will send you that information.
Okay, cool. I'll just walk.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. And thank you also to Mele for helping us out this weekend in East Palo Alto.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Cheryl's excited too.
Do your Sundance. Anyway.
Yes,
Yes.
bringing that with me, some vibes.
So I assume you're gonna be sending some information about like specifically where we go on each of these days.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. That's all I've got. Anything else, Vanessa, coming to mind? Okay.
Any public comment on the list of spring festivals?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is upcoming topics for discussion.
Yes, okay. So I have bringing back reach codes as an action item on my list. Starred. I'm putting stars in. Here we go. Okay, great. And then let me give you a hint what's coming up. At the April board meeting.
I'm sorry, Kirsten, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
So I heard the discussion about bringing reach codes back for an action item. I don't know whether I need to speak with the chair or with staff, but I guess I'd like to get a better sense of what kind of action item the group is considering, because when you talk about the 2 different modalities that are being considered, those are being considered by the cities. So PCE is not going to control or direct which methodology the cities choose. That's going to be for the cities to decide. So I guess and I'm not trying to start a new discussion. It's just I think I would like to try and help frame a recommendation, but I'm going to need a little bit more information in order to do that. So I don't know whether it's staff or the chair that I need to talk with, but I think I'll need to talk to someone before that's re-agendized.
Right, thank you, David, because Peninsula Clean Energy's approach on reach codes, just to offer a little more background, is that we support the cities in making their decisions. We don't tell them which decision they should make.
Right.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
So I think there was an assumption that the discussion and action item would be oriented towards cities. And that's something that we could decide to do or not do. But it would be helpful if David or someone from legal could tell us what we're permitted to take action on and make recommendations on and what we can't. And then let us have the discussion and make the recommendations that we feel are appropriate based on that guidance of what's appropriate. And if we can't comment on cities specifically, that's okay. I think the request was more that there's interest in commenting on this topic and making a recommendation or putting a recommendation forward for consideration. And we would just need to know, like, what is permitted legally, what can we talk about, and what can we take action?
Well, that's why I need to have I think I need to have a conversation with, I think there needs to be more framing or more flesh on what it is the group may want to recommend. The primary, focus of this group is to make recommendations to the PCE board. That's the jurisdiction of this group. And I guess, as I understand it, and, I'm not being coy, like I've been very involved, not the most involved, but I've been involved with the internal discussions about reach codes and what PCE is doing and how they're going to interact with the cities. And it's hard for me to see how this group could make an effective recommendation to PCE that would be, but again, I think whoever is interested, less than a quorum in making some form of recommendation, maybe I should meet with that group so we can talk together about what kind of recommendation you might want to make, and maybe that will be helpful.
That would be very helpful. I'm raising my hand, and I think Diane did too. We would love to meet with you. That would be very helpful.
Yep. So why don't we set that up? I defer to Kirsten on timing, and I presume she might want to be involved, and maybe Blake or Raphael or something. I don't think, I recognize this is very important. I don't think that, and there is stuff happening, but from like a PCE perspective, I don't see any emergentness to this, because I don't, other than PCE developing options and presenting them to the cities, which is already happening. I don't see like there's like a particular thing that is going to happen like in the next month that is going to be that's going to be significant from a timing standpoint.
I do, yeah. There's all kinds of.
Respectfully disagree on that.
I disagree. There's quite a bit of communication going on now between PC and the cities. There have to be. You have an ordinance, questions are going to come up, you're talking to them. We would like to be part of that discussion. I'll be blunt.
Yeah, we feel like this is urgent and we're asking, can we take it back and make recommendations? And I think to say no is a little heavy-handed. And so I think you're saying you can meet with us and guide us on what we can and can't talk about or recommend. But Robert and I feel like this is urgent, so can we not delay it? If you feel like a meeting is important before we can calendar something, that's okay, but can you meet our sense of urgency?
I have to say, I have to be honest, I was a little put off when you said delay it more than a month. To me, this is a next week kind of thing. This is urgent. Cities are already talking about it. My city is trying to decide what to do with it. We have a decarbonization study that's going to kick back up when Andrea Child returns from maternity leave. The time is now for us. We're also trying to.
I would ask that you give me the benefit of the doubt. I'm here for you, and I will meet as quickly as you want. I am not telling you what you think is urgent. I'm just telling you what I think. For me, I'm not in a rush. If you're in a rush, let's get a meeting on calendar as soon as you want. But what I'm telling you is PCE is not going to be telling cities what to do. So if you want to make a recommendation that is, please tell the cities to adopt this methodology, PCE is not going to be doing that. So, but let's set up a meeting and talk.
That's it.
Yeah, I think we should abstain from discussing the substance right now, and we can just offline work on calendaring.
Sounds great.
Okay, we'll get a meeting set up in the next week, maybe.
Well, it all depends on your schedules, which we don't know yet. And also, a bunch of us are gonna be out at CalCCA next week. So it's a bad time for meeting with staff in the next week, because we're gonna be out for a few days. So we will do our best with the calendars that we have.
Good. All right. So we were in the middle of, I think, upcoming topics.
Yes, all right. So coming up on the agenda items coming up. Right. So coming up at the board meeting in April, there'll be some additional discussion on amending our 24/7 hourly strategy, still to go in the same direction, but maybe amending some of the timing on that. I mentioned that the procurement, the energy markets are very expensive right now, and so there's real trade-offs between getting super clean energy. If we do it right now, it's going to be very expensive, and the ratepayers are already really hurting with expensive energy. So we're balancing those things. So that's coming up in April for the board, and then coming up in May, we'll be doing some strategic reporting at the board meetings, and also I'm gearing up to do a report on 1 year of implementation of our DEI action plan. So that is, and then we'll be
I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't hear the first word, DI.
Oh, DEAI,
Oh,
diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion.
I thought you said DUI, sorry.
Sometimes I feel that way. But no, yeah, the board approved the DEAI action plan a year ago and asked us to report back on our progress. So we'll be doing that in May. So given that, what additional topics might you be interested in?
The reference stall, is there anything that you're gonna, what's the timing on that? Is this premature to be asking?
The turnkey operation.
Yeah.
All turnkey,
I
the
know
rollout.
that, you know,
I'm sorry, let me reframe it. One of the questions we get asked at workshops is, how do I qualify and how do I get on a waiting list?
Right.
And I know you've explained to me how complicated it is, but whatever you can do to keep us informed, and we can tell folks back in our towns what to look out for.
right.
And if it's not for a month or so, just tell them.
My
But
understanding right now is I don't think we're planning to have a waiting list. I think we're just planning to open the program and then you apply then. It's my understanding at the moment.
That's what Alejandro told me.
Okay, yes. So
and I was also confused about the income levels. I heard 2 or 3 different levels, and I know you're working on that too.
yeah, okay, great.
That'd be perfect, thank you.
We will see if we'll see if we have any updates. I don't know if we do, but we'll see.
What's the general timeframe for that, like launch?
I heard
Fall.
Fall,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so no,
I
Diane
have
has
one request, yeah. When the timing is right, I would love to hear an update on the IRA and how the various funding programs are getting dispersed locally or even statewide and how that impacts PCE. I think you mentioned the Cal CCA conference, and I think Cal CCA has been actively tracking this. So I don't know if at that conference, those reports would be shared and then that they could be shared with our group. Just so that we know, like, if San Mateo County is able to take advantage. I think the GGRF or one of the major IRA funds, I think was just recently just GR. One of the greenhouse gas reduction fund, I think, was recently distributed to local groups. I don't know if San Mateo County benefited from that. You know, whenever the timing is right, it would just be, I think, interesting for our group.
Yeah, okay.
And if we could split that into Homes and Hero, there's the two programs with separate applications to the Department of Energy. And if you could split that, I get confused every time I look at it. If you could help me get past some of that confusion, it would be helpful. Same thing you said, it's confusing. And it seems to me that it's changing as we sit here, that the California Energy Commission is changing the way they're approaching it. I attended some of the workshops. I got working with you, sat there attending the workshops than I was before. So anything you can do to help me overcome my confusion.
Okay.
And Kathleen had one, yeah.
I have a question. This is probably not something for a future thing, but I just realized I wanted to get an update. And while David's here, he might be able to answer this. Do we have an update on when the GovBE program is going to open for applications? Because the website still says program applications open March 2024, date to be determined. So
What was that? We have a bunch of gov, like PVBE.
BE, the building electrification.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so the website is a little bit out of date now because it's saying it'll open sometime in March of 2024, but we don't know when. And we're past that. So that's a program I get asked about a lot. So
Okay.
do we know when? The last I heard was something about the contract was still being reviewed by legal department. So I don't know if it's still there or not. And I'm hoping David knows, and he's talking, but he's on mute.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself, but I think I unmuted myself and then muted myself again. This is the contract with the new contractor.
I'm not exactly sure if it's with the new contractor or if it's like the language that recipients would have to sign. Maybe it was the grant agreement. I'm not sure. I just heard that some piece of it was waiting.
I know that my team was working on a government. I know my team was working on that project and a contract last week.
Okay.
But I thought that we were done as of last week. But there were some. If this is the thing I'm thinking of, there's some stuff that that's unsettled.
Okay, the last message I got from Blake about it, I think this is the last one, said, we're still working through creating the loan contract.
You know more than I do. I think that Blake is your best source of truth on this.
Okay, it sounded like, but he said that it was in legal review, so that was why I was asking, hoping he didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible that it's in legal review, and I wouldn't know because Jennifer Stalzer, my colleague, does the vast majority of that review.
Okay.
If you want to, I'm sorry, do you have that in an email?
Yeah, I got an email from Blake. This was about a month ago. I thought I'd heard something more recent, but that's the latest thing I can find here.
You certainly don't have to, but if you want to forward that email to me, I can follow up and get a response.
Okay. It's of interest because I get asked about it, and it's of interest because I did volunteer for the committee and I'm got some travel coming up and I want to make sure I'm here to help out.
Right. No, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so we're finished with that agenda item.
Actually, I have a quick question though. Considering that the board is going to be hearing strategic updates at the next, in the next May board meeting and DEI updates, are those of interest to you, or would you prefer to kind of dive into specific kind of technical items?
Say that again. Sorry.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, wasn't
Yeah.
just me.
So in May, the board is going to be hearing some updates on our kind of strategic plan implementation overall as an organization. And also updates on our DEI action plan. We could bring some of that to you all, if that's ready, or we could focus on more kind of like technical program type items in May that you've been suggesting. Do you have a preference?
I'd love your strategy.
Yeah, I'll go for strategy.
Okay. This is strategy as well. And so generally what happens when we set the agendas, there's more topics that folks are interested in than we have time for, then we prioritize.
I guess if we could do strategy and DEI would be nice, just because like the DEI started with our committee, so if we have any recommendations to the board on maybe what to do in the next year.
I love that.
So the person giving the update on that, I could do that.
All right, the next agenda item is committee members' reports. Does anyone have something they'd like to share?
I'll go real quick. San Mateo had a workshop thanks to the grant from PCE. We had 50 people attend. We had a contractor with a display of a heat pump mini split that actually worked, that you could listen to, and it was very quiet. It will be at the Love Our Earth Festival, I understand. So if you want to see what a heat pump looks like, how a mini split works, how quiet they are, they will be there. And we're following up with all the people there and sending out information. For the group that I'm doing this with, 350 Silicon Valley, we're scheduling hopefully 2 in Redwood City, 1 in San Bruno, 1 in Half Moon Bay, and 1 in Pacifica. And we could use some help in getting the lay of the land in San Bruno. Gail Lee and I are working on that a little bit, but more people from San Bruno would be a big help. San Bruno, historically, I used to work there, has not been a big environmental organization or city. We'd like to fix that. Give them a chance. So there you go. And thank you, PCE, for the grant.
Well, thank you very
Nice.
much to 350 Silicon Valley for really going to town on these workshops. It's been great.
I think we've got a pattern down now, I think. Oh, we're looking for Spanish speakers for Redwood City. And we'll talk to some of the people. Thank you.
Maybe help you with that, but let me know more what you're thinking.
Yeah, I can walk it through.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a report. I'll just say, come to the Love Our Earth Festival Saturday to see that product that Robert mentioned and to have a good time. And thank you, PCE, for the grant so that we can do the event. It's great. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.